Morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes here. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And then at the same time, if there's any questions that you have during the webinar, please send them in the chat here in the Teams webinar portal, and I'd be happy to address it after my presentation and demo. With that, we'll get started. First of all, my name is Hai. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. Happy New Year to all of you, and thank you so much for being here today. Hopefully, you're here today because you're interested in learning on how to be more productive and more effective this year. I think that's a goal that all of us can aspire to, including myself. And so my presentation today is really about giving you an introduction to Matrix, show you the basics of the software, and then I also want to make sure that I give you some guidance on how to get the most out of Matrix with the least amount of work. So keep that in the back of your mind. And if there's any questions, please send them in the chat. This is a great opportunity for us to have a discussion around it, and I'd be happy to talk about any specific use cases. You should be able to see my screen here. I want to confirm that you can see my screen. And so we'll go ahead and get started with the deck here. Our goals for today: help you understand the basics of Matrix, and then provide you the framework to get 80% of the value with 20% of the work, right? I think that's the best way to get started. It gives you a really good head start in using the software and ensure that you actually get value out of it right away. And then also help you envision what your work and life success might look like with Matrix implemented. And once you have all those priorities, prioritize what happens next. And then finally, I'll try to give some tips and tricks on how to use Matrix to manage your 2024 goals. That's been a top of mind for me for the past couple of weeks. What are the things I want to accomplish this year? And then how do I ensure that I actually work on those goals? And so I'll show you how to use Matrix to implement that. So the challenge that I always see talking to our customers is that one, teams have trouble understanding what's priority right now. More so than ever before, multiple people, when they're working together across so many projects, really struggle with understanding where you can best focus your time. And every customer I talk to seems to have similar sentiment. And then secondly, it's getting harder to keep track on the status of work across so many areas, responsibilities. And what I mean by that is, you have the things that you have to do for your manager, then you have the things you have to do for your external people, and then you have the things you have to do for this project and then that initiative. It just seems like we're just given more and more tasks, but not really given a clear picture on where we should focus our time. And then thirdly, emails and meetings just cause far too much context switching. And so despite all these applications and software that's out there to help us be more productive, what I find, and also what our customer find, is that you're just switching context constantly. You get that email that is so urgent that you have to respond to, and so you're dropping all sorts of stuff to actually get that to respond to that email. And then meetings is where you have all those calls and coming up with new ideas and so forth, but there's no accountability on ensuring that those things get done. And if you face these challenges, you're not the only one. And guess what? This was a challenge. These are challenges in 2023, and they're challenges in 2024. So what is Matrix? Matrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software that helps individuals prioritize their most important tasks in emails. It helps teams stay aligned on key projects, and it helps entire organizations create single source of truth to become more effective and more efficient. Now, you're here today, you're listening to this call, you could be using Matrix on an individual level, you could be using Matrix on a team level, or you could look at Matrix at a whole organizational level. And Matrix works across all three of those. And so for me, when I think about Matrix, I think it always starts at the individual, because if you are able to focus on the key task that matters to you, then everything else will figure itself out, right? And so Matrix is a communication software, and that's something that I emphasize. Stay aligned and focus on what really matters. So how does Matrix help with these challenges that I talked about? First, we use what's called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. And I'll go into more details around that particular methodology and how to actually implement it. And then secondly, Matrix provide views such as the one-on-one, the agenda, timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And context is the key word here. When we talk about context, we're talking about, okay, I start my day. Where should I spend my time? Okay, I'm in this meeting. What task do I need to talk about? Okay, I'm meeting with my manager. What are the things we need to discuss? That's context. And Matrix provide you insight into each of those. And then thirdly, Matrix provides integrations into systems you already use, including Microsoft Teams and Outlook. So we're probably the most integrated software for the Teams and Outlook ecosystem. And so that allows you to actually turn emails into tasks and then delegate those emails and ensure that you're actually, not dropping the most important emails that you have. So what makes Matrix better than so many other solutions? You've probably seen 1,000 software applications out there for managing your to-do list. Well, Matrix, first of all, is a Microsoft 365 security certified solution, and the only one that I'm aware of that's certified for Teams, Outlook, and web app. We're actually leveraging AI to help teams and individuals achieve their goals. Now, I'm not going to really show too much on the AI stuff. I think that's icing on the cake. You don't need to use any of those features to actually be focused and work on the right things. But I think that AI injected in the right places can be really beneficial down the road to help you generate reports and so forth. So that's something that I'm really excited about, but that's even beyond the scope of today's webinar. And then we provide what's called people-centric collaboration, which means not only, when you do things, you're not just doing it from the perspective of a project, you're doing it from the perspective of people, right? You're doing something for somebody. And so Matrix flips that around too, so you can see everything you have to do for somebody, so for another individual. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a SaaS solution, a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare and life sciences, as well as an Azure government cloud solution. So if you're looking at a broader deployment of Matrix or need to learn about our enterprise solution, definitely reach out to us. So what makes Matrix effective is that it helps you determine what you need to work on now, what you should work on later, and what are the things you should delegate. And that's pretty much it. It's just adding structure to this chaos that we already have in terms of, tracking all these tasks. Instead of having one long list, you have a better understanding, okay, this is where I should focus my time, or this is the long list that my manager has. These are the things that are important and urgent, and these are the things that aren't. So priorities are constantly shifting. Matrix offer the one place everyone can go to understand what needs to be done. So let's talk about the fundamental behind Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I really like about this quote is that it gives us a really good understanding of how we should think about the things we have to do. And so you probably started your day this morning, you probably open your phone, look at your email, and guess what? the last email in, that last email is the one you look at first, right? Seldom do we actually go through the list of emails we have and actually focus on the things that are actually important. It's very, very difficult to do that. And so human by nature is just always looking at the next thing. And so the urgent things are the things that's constantly requiring our attention. And I'm guilty of this too. And so it's that it's that shiny thing syndrome where we're constantly pulled away from what truly matters. And so we work on things just because it's exciting, not necessarily because it fulfills our goals. And so we work on things that are urgent, not necessarily because they're important. And so instead of having a task list, right, what we want to do is we categorize them into the dimensions of importance and urgency. So an exercise that I like to do, and I like to ask you to do too, is imagine, take out a piece of paper, write down all the things you have to do, right? And now you have a long list. So a question I have for you is, where do you start? Top of the list or bottom of the list? And typically we struggle to understand where we need to focus our time. And so we do end up doing first in, first out, or last in, first out. So instead, take this and put it into a 2x2 matrix. And so, for example, the things that are important, urgent, you will put into the do now bucket. And then the important but not urgent is the bucket that's for planning. And then the stuff that not so important, maybe you can delegate to others who can do a better job than you. And then you should drop everything that's not important and not urgent. And then use the last quadrant, the last bucket, as your inbox to track all the other things that you haven't categorized yet. So now, if you actually did your to-do list this way, when you look at the matrix, you know exactly where you should be focusing your time. And so this next step is where the magic happens. Imagine if you did this on a piece of paper and you wrote down your priorities, and then you walk around the office and you compare notes. Imagine if your manager did the same exercise. Imagine your coworkers did the same exercise. And if you work with external clients, imagine if they did this exercise. Now suddenly you can see what their priorities are, and you can show them what your priorities are. And then you can have meaningful conversation. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning. And that's the hardest part. So honestly, when you use Priority Matrix, the hardest part that you'll find about the software is determining where to put those tasks that you've just created, right? And trust me, that's where you should be focusing your time. Half your effort should be in identifying what are the things that truly matters that I really work on. And so if you have more than 25% of the things in quadrant 1, then maybe perhaps that's too much, right? And so perhaps you should actually reprioritize some of those things. And so quadrant 1 should be minimal. It should be really something that, if you have any spare time whatsoever, that's where you should spend your effort. And so the thing that's not so obvious when you use Priority Matrix in a team environment is that success from using Priority Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's about discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And so when you do that comparison with your manager, with your coworker, and you identify, oh, hey, this is what I thought was important, but you don't think it's important, we should have a conversation around it. And when you have those kind of conversation using Priority Matrix, you've gotten success from the software. So you can think of Priority Matrix as that digital version of that to-do list, and we have all the bells and whistles for everything that you need to actually be extremely successful with it. One of the best practices that I've seen customers do is they project Priority Matrix onto the big screen when they're in the conference room. You look at it, the team priority project is there, and voila, everyone is able to be aligned on exactly, everyone's aligned on exactly what are the priorities, and then you can have meaningful discussions around that. And it's okay to have disagreement, but that's where you should focus your time on discussing instead. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the product itself. I do want to mention that the webinars are recorded, and so we post the webinars on our website, affluence.com/webinars. I also will be talking about email management today, but we actually have a deep dive into email management. So search for the Email Management Masterclass webinar if you're really interested in understanding how to prioritize your emails. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump to the product. So here I have my Priority Matrix open. As you can see, the 4-quadrant is front and center. And so I have the do now, the do later, delegate, and inbox. I happen to have my web app open. I have a project selected. And as you can tell, with Priority Matrix, the structure is extremely important. So the 4-quadrant methodology is fundamental to how the software works and why it's being used. So if you're not familiar with the 4-quadrant yet, just try to wrap your head around how do I categorize these things into various buckets, right? And so Matrix is meant to be visual. So when you look at Matrix, you can see exactly, how many things you have in the top left, how many things you have in top right. And so when you work on things, you work on things on the top left, and then afterwards work on the top right. And so if everything is top left, that means you're constantly firefighting. That's not good. So keep that in mind as you use Matrix. Now, let me give you an overview of the structure of Matrix. On the left-hand side, these are projects. So you can think of projects as many possible things. So a project might be an actual project if you're a project manager, right? So maybe you're building doing a construction project or something like that. So that is a project. And within that project, you might have a series of tasks that you have to work on. Another project might be goals for 2024. And that's one of those things I want to talk about in terms of what are the things that, some tips for you to do that. So I might list all my goals for 2024, my personal goals in 2024 in one of those projects. I might have a project for employee training. I might have a project that's persistent. Persistent means that it sticks around for a long time. So for example, at our company, we have a project for each of our applications. So our iOS application, our Teams application, our Mac application, our Windows application, etc., each have their own projects. And so what's nice about that is when I go to that project, I can know exactly what all the tasks that are pending, what are all the things that are being worked on. I have very good visibility on that, and I can understand exactly what the priorities are. And that's extremely powerful as a way to create transparency and accountability across your organization. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, which is imagine if you knew what everyone's priorities are, how much more effective you can be, right? And that's the goal of the software. So those are the types of projects. And then you have the quadrants. And then within the quadrants, I can create what's called task. And you can think of tasks, what we call action items. It might be things that you have to do or goals or whatever it is. So let me give you an example here. So maybe I have in this project, I want to create a task that says follow up with webinar participants, okay? Now, when I type something like that, that's a task, that's something I have to do. But the other thing I can do here too, I can say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So what's going to happen now is I click add and it's going to create a task, and that task on the right-hand side opens what's called the item details. And I have the task name, the project it's in. What I can do with this task is actually I can star it, which signifies to the system that's important. I can actually add an icon to it. And then if I look down further, this task is assigned to me. And guess what? The due date automatically got picked up from the text itself. So we use what's called natural language to interpret this text. So when I say due tomorrow at 2 p.m., the system automatically set a due date for you using your local time. So I could say due in 2 weeks, I could say due in 5 minutes, etc. And so Matrix tracks that for you. And next to the due dates is what's called reminders. And there's a big difference between the two. Due dates is when something is due. Reminders is a way for the system to tell you, hey, you should start working on this. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you're working on taxes and that's due in April, right? And if you say, okay, that's due April 15th. Now, if you wait until April 15th to get started, then good luck. I don't think you're going to get it done. So maybe you want to set a reminder for a month prior to gather all your documents and so forth. So that's a difference in due dates and reminders. So how I use it is, for example, I would say due I want to follow up with the customer. I would say due in 2 weeks, but then I would say remind me in 1 week, or remind me weekly. So the way Matrix works too is as you scroll down further, this is the chat section. In the chat section, I can type these commands that I just said. So for example, instead of saying due tomorrow, I can now say due in 2 weeks. And then I can also say, remind me weekly, as I mentioned to you. So now what happens is Matrix sets a due date and it sets a recurring reminder for me automatically. And so we use this natural language to make it easier for you to actually set these metadata to the task itself. Now, here's a tip about Matrix. Use due dates and use reminders as much as possible for your important task. So I can't recommend enough how important it is for us to actually be accountable on a time basis. Because if we talk about importance and urgency, right, you know what tasks are important. Then you got to make sure you set a date. You got to time block it, ensure that you actually have put the effort and so forth to actually tackle that. So I always set due dates and reminders on anything that I deem important that I have to follow up to. So you see here, I set the due date, I set reminders, and The reason why the reminder works is because it overcomes that challenge we have of dealing with urgency. So earlier, I talked about how when you first start your day, guess what? You look at your email and then you look at the last email. Now, imagine if on a constant basis, your most important email that maybe you received a week or two ago constantly pops back up to the very top of the list, right? Then you know you're going to get to it. Then you're definitely going to answer it. You're definitely going to work on it. And that's why Matrix works. By setting those recurring reminders, it brings it up to the very top of the list for you, and then allows you to actually be reminded on working on it. And I know I'm talking a lot about this specific feature, but in my opinion, this is one of the most important capabilities inside Matrix. So if you use Matrix and you use almost no other functionality, I recommend that you use the quadrants. Make sure that you create tasks, put in the appropriate quadrants, and then set due date reminders. And that's it, right? Those are the only basic capabilities that you need, and you'll find that you're going to be on top of everything that matters so much more quickly. Now, moving on to other features inside Matrix, you have the notes section. That's where you can add subtasks, you can add bullets, you can add some other metadata. And then you have the resources section, which is where you can upload files, documents, links, and then you can also attach emails as well. So that's probably the number one reason why customers come to Matrix is email prioritization. What happens is they struggle with having an email that comes in and then making sure that actually you set the proper due date, or you need to delegate it to ensure that you actually respond to it, right? So I'm going to go through the email prioritization aspect of it too. But the other thing I want to mention here is you see how you can upload file, but inside Matrix, if you use Matrix on the web app, on the mobile app, you can actually attach photos and documents as well. So let's just say if you're out in the field and you have a task that says do XYZ, what happens is that you can actually snap a picture of that afterwards and have that be attached as a resource into your action item as well. Okay, so that's the basics of Matrix. You have the projects, you have the quadrants, you have the tasks. Now let's talk about the projects themselves. How do you create a project? What can you do with it? So let me show you. So here, I'm going to go ahead and jump to another project. You see how here I have do now, do later, delegate, inbox. Well, I'm going to jump to my goals for 2024, which I created. And you see what I did was actually I customized this particular project to use different quadrant names that's a little bit more reflective on this particular goals that I have for this project. So in order to customize a project, it's very simple. You just click on this eye icon here, and now on the right-hand side, it shows you the project details. So you saw the item details, the project details lets you do the same thing, but customize your project. So I have the project name, which I can click on this edit. I can start the project. Starting the project puts at the very top of the list, so it allows you to actually access it very easily. And then below that, you can actually add members, which allows you to share a project with other team members. So, for example, when you first use Matrix, you might have a couple of projects. You might have a personal project, right? That's your personal priorities. These are things you got to do. Then you might have a team project. That team project, you might have your direct reports, the people that you want to understand their priorities, you delegate stuff to them. You might have a project on various initiatives. So for example, if you're in marketing, you might have a marketing Q1 2024 project with all your goals and action items for that. Then within that, you might have the appropriate team members. And so to invite team members, you just click on this plus, choose a team member, and then when they're in, they have full access to it. So then what's neat is that if you have a project that's shared with team members, everyone's on the same page. They start their Party Matrix, they go to that project, and all your information is there. There's complete alignment together. Now, you might disagree, but that's okay. You can focus on that disagreement and talk about it, but everyone agrees that whatever is in the Party Matrix is the single source of truth. And if you practice that, you'll find that your team communication will improve drastically. Below that, you have the quadrants themselves. Party Matrix gives you a lot of customization. So actually, I can click on this and I can change the color of the quadrants. I like to have different quadrant colors based on categories. So for example, if you're an organization, you might have engineering project that might be one color, marketing project might be another color, or if you have a project to work with an external client, different types of clients might be different colors, etc. And then the quadrant names themselves are customizable. So instead of do now, I actually made quadrant 1 my long-term goals, and you just simply click on this and type your delete the text there and add your new goals. And then finally, instead of quadrant 4 inbox, I call it ideas. I always like to have a quadrant for my catch-all, right? Sometimes I can't decide yet where it belongs, and so by putting into quadrant 4, that's where it starts, and then from there I put it into the appropriate places. So that's a good practice in general that I think is pretty helpful. Okay, so that's how a project works. Now, after you create a type of project for your organization, what you can also do is you can save as a template. This is actually really neat. So imagine if here you have a new employee training handbook. So you create a project with new employees training handbook where you create 30 different tasks that a new employee has to do. So let's say you're in HR and there's just some compliance stuff that they have to do, submit their information to payroll, etc., go through training and all that, and there's just a series of tasks. You can actually create a party matrix with all of those tasks in place, and then you go to the top right here and you save it as a template. Then, when you have a new employee, instead of having to recreate party matrix again, you simply add a new project using your save template. And this will save you so much time if you have any recurring tasks whatsoever. I really recommend this for organizations that's trying to streamline their efficiency. And 2024 is a perfect time to think about how to be a little bit more effective and how to spend your time better. And the least of all, the last thing you want to do is to do the same thing over and over again and recreating the same task over and over again. So Party Matrix allows you to use these templates to save you a ton of time. The cool thing about templates too is if you set due dates, let's say you say this task is due in 1 day, this task is due in 1 week, etc. And when you launch a new project from template, you just set the start date and all the due dates get propagated for you. So when a new employee comes online, it is super easy for them to see the things they have to do. Likewise, you can create a project for customer onboarding or recurring processes that you have that happens on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, etc. You could even have a project for quarterly reviews as well. Okay, so that's how you can customize a project. Now, let me show you how to actually create a project. It's actually very, very straightforward. You click on projects here, and then you choose show all projects, and you add project. And when you choose to add a project, we actually give you several choices. The first, of course, is a blank project. So the blank project is very simple. So when you choose blank project, you can just type the project name, and then you choose a color, and there's something called user group. You can think of it as departments and so forth. So you can say this is a marketing project, and so add it to my marketing department, but that's totally optional in terms of usage. But that's what a blank project is. And typically the basic Party Matrix has that do now, do later categorization. Instead of a blank project, I can actually also choose one of the existing public templates that we provide. So at Party Matrix, we've seen all types of use cases. We actually provide several hundred types of templates, but in this list, I think you get a few dozens here of various ways to rename the quadrant and so forth. So find one that's helpful for you if you want to use one that's already in place. Earlier, I mentioned around how you can save your own templates. Well, if you save your own templates, it will show up here in My Templates, right? So if you have employee onboarding or client onboarding or anything that you like to use recurringly, it will show up here in the My Templates section. And then lastly, we have a system called Create with AI. So in this particular case, you actually type in your goal. And so I don't know what that goal might be. You want to get a promotion in 2024. Maybe you want to get a raise. Maybe you want to improve your fitness. It doesn't matter what it is. You type in that goal, you click next, and Party Matrix will generate a project along with a series of action items for you to achieve that goal. It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to help you get started. So that's how you create a project. It's very, very straightforward. Okay, so now we've talked about projects. We've talked about the quadrants. We've talked about the task. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is how do you determine what to work on at any point in time? So when you use Party Matrix, there's this thing called the home view. The home view is sort of where you get started. So when I use Party Matrix personally, I start in the home view. And first and foremost, there's the alert section. And what the alert section does is it actually shows you the tasks that require your attention. And these include tasks that have been delegated to you, or tasks that you follow that have been updated, or if you set those due dates and reminders, it shows up here in the alert as well. So when I start my day, I see a bunch of alerts, I click through the alerts, and then when I get to inbox 0, then I know that I've looked at everything that that matters to me. But once in a while, what you do is maybe the list is too overwhelming. You just click on here and then clear all notifications. And this is where those recurring reminders is so powerful. What happens is I can clear all my notifications, but because I have recurring reminders, Party Matrix will surface those back up to me again the next time those trigger. And so when I have something that's really important, Party Matrix is always there to remind me. And so I can't tell you enough how many times I forget something, but because I have those recurring reminders, I get these alerts and I'm able to address it. And so I rarely drop important tasks for that reason. And so within the home view here, you have access to a couple of other views, including the ability to search for your item, including the ability to see your agenda and so forth. Now, let me shift gear a little bit and talk about email management. As I mentioned, customers come to Party Matrix to prioritize their email better. So let me give you an example here. I'm opening now Outlook, and I have an Outlook account signed in. Let's just say if I have an email that asks for a quote, right? And so here I get an email, and let's just say now I want to set a due date for it, and I want to go and make sure that I don't forget this. Now, I know that, the easiest thing you can do is you get the email, now you can mark it as unread and flag it. And that's great. You might have a few flagged emails and you'll get back to it. But if you have 50 flagged email or 100 flagged emails, good luck finding the one that you need to work on, right? So the way it works with Party Matrix is instead of just taking an email and flagging it, you can actually convert it into a task. So in order to do that, you just need to install Party Matrix for Outlook. And this, by the way, comes all together in one single package with respect to our software and our licensing and so forth. So Party Matrix works on Outlook and web, and all of those sync together. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, to get to the Outlook application, you click on apps here, click add apps and search for Party Matrix and sign in. Now, of course, I already have Party Matrix installed. I click on Party Matrix. I can choose to prioritize email. And now what happens is this view comes out and allows me to turn this email into a task. And so, I've already converted this email into a task before. So Party Matrix intelligently tells me that, hey, there's a possible duplicated item, so I don't create additional tasks as needed. But imagine if this was a brand new task, I just click capture email, and this email is now converted into an action item, and I can actually change the name of the task. I can choose the project it goes in, I can choose the quadrant it goes in, and I can assign to the appropriate people. It is so useful here when you think about using Party Matrix to prioritize an email. Because how many times has it been where you get a really important email, you forward it to somebody, and then crickets? Because that person probably didn't see it in their email, or it's because that email was lower on the list and there's 15 other emails that came in afterwards. Right now, you might have a really important email that no one is looking at, and there's no sense of due dates, and so your recipients doesn't know that, or your coworker doesn't know that, hey, this is an important email that needs to be responded to, and there's no reminders, there's no due dates, there's no sense of priorities. And so Party Matrix solves all of those problems for you in one central place by putting into the appropriate quadrant in the appropriate project, assigned to the appropriate person with the appropriate due dates. And that's how we tackle the problems of email prioritization. So all you have to do is click capture email, and that email is uploaded. Your coworker can actually open that email, even if they don't have access to this email itself, and they can respond to the email as needed. It is so helpful when you have something that's due in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's further out, because again, flagging just doesn't work in a situation like that. But here's the cool thing about Party Matrix, which is you can attach email to existing tasks as well. And so we're the only application that I'm aware of that lets you do that. So now when I open Party Matrix, instead of going to prioritize email, I click open Party Matrix, and now Party Matrix, a new panel pops up. And what this allows me to do is actually I can search through my Party Matrix and attach the email to an existing task, right? And so if you have an email from a client and you already have a task open for that client, well, Party Matrix lets you attach that email to the same task, so then you're not creating duplicated work. And then not only that, it actually creates a lot more, put everything in one central place, right? If you have one particular task for a customer and you have all the emails in place in one place, all the files, all the documents, all the resources, all the dependent tasks and so forth, then it's so much clearer and easier to understand what needs to be done. And then not only that, when you delegate it to another person, they get the full context. I am sure you ran into a situation where you assign somebody something as a task and they have no other context. They don't have the documents that you've created. They don't have the email conversations. They don't have the Teams conversations. And so Party Matrix solves that problem as well. And so that level of transparency and accountability is a phenomenal value add from our system. So that's how Party Matrix for Outlook works. And it is extremely useful, extremely powerful. A lot of customers use it to ensure that their most important emails don't fall through the crack. Now, the way I use Party Matrix for email, I also use what's called the inbox. And so what happens in Party Matrix, if you go back to Party Matrix here and you go to the inbox, you can copy the secret inbox address. So every single one of you have a secret inbox address. When you send an email to that secret inbox address, it creates a task in Party Matrix. You've probably seen this in a couple of other places before. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and copy here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and copy this inbox address here. Okay, and then when I go to Party Matrix, I can go new mail, paste this right here, and then here's a task. And I can say due tomorrow, 2 p.m., and I can click send. Now, of course, if you use this feature all the time, you just save that email address as a contact. So for me, what I do is I save that email address as a contact. I call it inbox Party Matrix. So then whenever I'm on the road and I'm on my phone and I'm using Apple Mail and I get an email, it's like, oh, I really need to prioritize this email, right? Again, I can flag it and hope for the best and hope that I'll get back to it. But instead, I forward it into Party Matrix, and then I just set the due date in the subject. I'm sorry, in the body. And so Party Matrix will create the task for me, and I'll get that reminder the next time. And in fact, I can even say, in the new line, remind me daily, right? And so I've done this so many times, and it's helped me so much in terms of ensuring that I get to those important emails. So that's how email prioritization works. As I mentioned, there is a webinar on email management masterclass. If you can't find it, reach out to me and I'd be happy to send that to you, where we deep dive a little bit further into the different ways to use Party Matrix email integrations. Because we also integrate with Gmail as well. Okay, so you see that now I'm going back to this Party Matrix. I want to switch gear again and talk about Microsoft Teams. Now, you don't have to use Microsoft Teams to use Party Matrix, but if you do have Microsoft Teams, I'd strongly recommend that you install the application. So the way to do that is you go to the apps here and install Party Matrix, and then afterwards, make sure that you pin Party Matrix here on the left-hand side. What that does is allows you to access Party Matrix really quickly inside Teams without having to switch application. And I know I really like using our software inside Teams for that specific reason, because then I don't have to open another app and so forth. You know how painful that experience can be. Now, as you can see, when I open Party Matrix, the view looks almost identical to the web app view. In fact, this project that I have where I had created that task in the web app, that's all synced to my Teams app. So it's in one central place. I don't have to worry about signing in, signing out, any of those things. All of it is synced together seamlessly and across all my team members. They all see the exact same thing, right? That's why Party Matrix is so effective at creating that alignment. So I'm not going to go into the details here inside Teams, but there's a couple of things I want to show you further within the web application itself. And so the only one major difference is that the menu inside Teams is actually different. So you see how it's actually hidden up here as opposed to on the left-hand side. But if you look at Party Matrix, we also have several other views that you can look at the same data. So let me give you an example. Let's just say I'm going to jump to this other project here. And of course, I have the 4 quadrant. And in this particular case, I have effort impact matrix. Now, I talk about how important it is to have the quadrant view, but sometimes you actually need the list view. So I'd like to use the list view to see due dates. And so whenever tasks that are overdue in the list view, it's very, very easy to see that they're overdue because they're just red. And so when I go to list view, I can actually sort by name, by modified date, by due dates. And sometimes, some of my matrices have become so big that's kind of hard to see what are the new tasks that's been created. When I go to this list view, I can actually search for that pretty easily. And then we also have the calendar view. Now, of course, any action items that has due dates will show up in the calendar view. You can actually click on them here. You can drag and drop them as needed. And then we have the Gantt chart view, also known as the timeline view. And in this particular case, all the items that you have in due dates will show up here. And if there's dependencies between tasks, it actually link them together and shows how they're dependent on each other. So essentially, the quadrant view is a very good way to see within the context of priorities. The list view is just a way to categorize and sort information. The calendar view is good for seeing things that's due this month. And the Gantt chart view is good for seeing the bigger picture across multiple months at the same time. So that's how you can look at it. We have multiple other views inside Matrix that gives you the proper context based on whatever it is that you need. Now, let me show you some features inside Teams that makes Matrix very special. So if you go to a chat, let's say, if you use Teams, you probably chat with your coworkers all the time. Inside Matrix, inside Teams, you can go to what's called the PM one-on-one view. When I open this one-on-one view, what happens is I have a person selected, my coworker selected, and Matrix shows me everything I have in common with that person. This is so helpful if you work with a lot of colleagues across multiple projects. So if let's say you and your manager collaborate on several different projects. And so when you have your meeting, guess what? You don't have to go to Matrix, open the different projects to find the tasks that you have in common. The one-on-one view flips the whole model around and says, and it goes to a people-centric view and shows you all the things you have to do for that person or with that person in one central place across all your projects. So I like this a lot for one-on-one meetings. It's so effective because you can just look at it, talk about the major tasks that are coming up, reprioritize them, change the due date directly from here. I don't even have to open my Matrix. It's all accessible here. And then not only that, when you're in that meeting, that one-on-one meeting, and you come up with ideas and tasks, you click on Add Share Task and you type it directly here. And you can say, again, do X, Y, Z, and then you can say do tomorrow or do in 1 week, do in 1 month, etc. I've seen excuses over and over. When you have a meeting, you come up with all these brilliant ideas, and then 2 weeks later, you reconvene. It's like, oh, I didn't write that down. I never got around to it, right? So this skips that excuse. When you have an idea during your meeting, just create it directly from here. And it automatically assigns it to the other person. It automatically adds you as a follower. So then you get updated on it. And then not only that, you can put in the appropriate project with the appropriate quadrant, et cetera, directly from here. To add the one-on-one view is very straightforward. You just click on this plus icon, choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. Additionally, Matrix has other integrations in Teams called action cards, which allows you to actually send a Matrix task. What's nice about this is the way I use this is, let's say I assign a task to somebody and then I don't hear from them. It crickets for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't see it or maybe they didn't check the Matrix. So what I do is I go into this option, this ellipsis here. Again, choose Matrix. And by the way, if you don't see Matrix, you just have to add it, right? And sometimes IT organizations have to approve the application and so forth. If you run into any problem there, contact your IT or contact us, etc. I click on Matrix. I can actually search for the task, and I can insert that task right here. And so you see how earlier I actually created the task from email, and actually Matrix shows up here, and I can send it as a task. And you see how it actually built out an action card for me, and my coworker can look at it. The other thing I can do is actually sometimes you just have conversation with each other in Teams, and one of the things that you end up doing is actually creating tasks. So with Matrix, I can actually turn any Teams conversation into a task directly. And not only that, Matrix links back to Microsoft Teams to the moment in time when you had that conversation. So again, if you're brainstorming or you're talking to your manager on across a bunch of different things, and then you want to create a task around that, you don't have to open the software, go to a project, and do any of those things. You can create action items directly from Teams. Okay. We also have other integrations with Teams, including in meetings, where you can pull in Matrix as a tab. So when you have a meeting, for example, you can actually create a meeting and add Matrix as a tab to the meeting itself. So that's something that you can explore on your own. We also, if you go into Microsoft Teams and you search for Matrix, you'll see that we actually have workflows, which are automations, and then also we have the other applications within Microsoft Teams as well. So figure out the stuff that actually, is important to your organization and your own work, and you can add those as needed. But Matrix is one of the very first application that works with Copilot. So what's really neat about that is it's allows you, if you're an enterprise organization using Microsoft, you can actually leverage Matrix to do a lot of cool stuff. Okay, so that's how our Microsoft Teams integration works. That's how the application works. And we have other connectors that allows you to synchronize Matrix with Microsoft Edge, with Chrome, with pull in data from the various to-do list application, and so forth. So that's beyond the scope of today's webinar, but I wanted to explain to you how Product Matrix is there to meet your needs as you grow into the system, and then as you expand beyond the system. One last point that I want to bring up, and then I'll go back to the presentation, is that Product Matrix also provides all sorts of reports for you over time as well. And in fact, we're doing some really cool stuff that's in the pipeline for business customers. So if you are an executive or you're a director level person and you want to get reports on critical projects and so forth, we actually some really cool ideas that we're implementing. And so reach out to us with those questions and we'd be happy to show you. And then, in terms of reports, sometimes, you have basic questions such as, what did so-and-so person work on for the past quarter? Well, Product Matrix gives you that insight. You can go to what's called the search view. You click on filter. You can say, find me all the things that a person has finished. Over a certain time span, et cetera. And so Product Matrix gives me all of those insight from one central place, and actually I can see all the tasks that they got done within a certain quarter, et cetera. And then the last part with reports is actually we have these things called workload report, where it gives you one central place to see how overloaded an employee is. And this is so important in today's age, where someone might have so many tasks assigned to them they can't possibly get it done. And so you're probably guilty of this, either neither direction. Either you've been assigned too many things or you've assigned others too many things, right? So Product Matrix workload reports gives you a very good sense of how overloaded someone is from the perspective of time. And so never forget that Product Matrix, again, think about the two dimensions, time and importance, over and over again. So with that, I'm going to jump back to the presentation to wrap things up here. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to send those questions in the Teams chat and I'll be happy to address it. So it's now up to you. I assume that, vast majority of you are relatively new to Product Matrix or even haven't signed up yet. But if you do sign up for Product Matrix, use our apps in Teams and Outlook. If you do use them, they're not required. You can use Product Matrix on the web app, on the mobile app. All of that's already available. We also have integration inside Gmail and all that. And then if you're brand new to PM, I would recommend you create at least 3 priorities. I mean, 3 projects. One for your personal priorities, one for your share team priorities, and one for your key initiatives. One thing I want to add to that is one for your goals for 2024. So what I'm doing with my goals for 2024 is I created that matrix, the long-term goals, short-term goals, et cetera, and then I create a task for each of my goals, my sub goals, and then I set recurring reminders. Make sure you do that. Set recurring reminders on a monthly basis. So then Product Matrix will surface that up in 1 month. In February, you can look back like, oh yeah, I said that I was going to do that. And then in March, it's going to ping you again. Oh yeah, I said I was going to do that, right? And if it pings you enough time, you'll get to it. So do that. I highly recommend that. Invite the appropriate team members and pitch them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. I think that's probably the number one way to ensure success within the team is that you the people here today and the people watching this webinar, you already taken on the initiative, right? You're already on top of all of this. So it's not up to you to be successful. It's now you convincing others, hey, by the way, if we can be aligned on these key priorities, look how much more successful we can be. So it's on you to pitch that to them. When you create items in Product Matrix, make sure you set the due dates, make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrants, and then make sure you don't drop them. That's it. Just mark them as done when you're done. And ruthlessly prioritize. I recommend, again, never more than 25% of the things in quadrant 1. If you do have too many things in quadrant 1, you're not going to get, then you're firefighting constantly. Couple of advice, if you're very new, I would use Product Matrix to track the high impact task. I wouldn't put like my grocery list in Product Matrix, for example, but instead I would put my goals or the things I need to do, my plans and so forth. It just allows you to actually focus on the critical things. Never forget that Product Matrix is a communication tool. I know it's a task management. I know it's a way to prioritize priorities and so forth, but at the same time, it's a way to communicate to others, right? Your manager, your team members, your direct reports, your clients, your executives, all your priorities, and then vice versa. So then you can also see their priorities. And then use Product Matrix to manage your individual goals. That was our the start of Matrix, it started out as a software more than 10 years ago for individuals to prioritize their tasks. And so I still think that's the most important thing about the software, to make sure that you meet your goals. Okay, and so what success with Matrix should look like? You have one central place to track priorities. Everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Repetitive procedures are templatized to save you time on future work, and that important emails are prioritized and triaged to the right proper team members. That's pretty much it. If you're able to do those things with Matrix, I think you'll find success with the software, tremendous success with the software. All right, I'm going to take a look to see if there's any questions. Okay. So in terms of the when you create the secret email, you can write in any language. Now, what happens is our natural language processor is in English, but you can create a task when you send that email over. It can be in Spanish, it can be in another language, and Matrix will create a task based on that language. Now, from a menu standpoint, Matrix does have some other language options, but in terms of natural language itself, it's based on English. So can Matrix track how long it takes to finish a task? Yes, it actually does it automatically. So for example, when you go to a task inside Matrix here, and so I'll give you an example right here. So when you're done with Matrix, I'm sorry, we're done with a particular task, I can type done, of course. If I do that, what happens is it'll mark the task as done. And what happened too is Matrix will automatically tell you how much time has lapsed from the moment the task has been created. And so that gets processed within the system automatically. So there isn't like a button that you have to press that says start and end and so forth. So it's not like a time tracker from that perspective, but Matrix does track that it's been, X number of days since the task has been done. And actually down the road, we actually have all sorts of really advanced reports that can come from processing those times. So again, this is for business and enterprise customers exclusively, where if you are looking at using Matrix to become extremely effective at managing everyone's time and then understanding where people are spending their resources and so forth, we actually have AI systems that works on top of the existing Matrix data to give those analysis. But that's again is a custom option that we have for our enterprise customer. Is it possible to have a combined view of multiple projects in one view? The answer is yes in the search view. So we actually don't have a matrix view that combines all that. But if you go to the search view, for example, in the search view, you can actually run these various filters. It's actually pretty cool. So every project can actually have tags as well. So you see here, when I click on project, I can actually choose the projects that I want, and then I can actually see the list view across all of those projects. And not only that, what I can do is I can actually just search for my star projects. I can also filter the projects with project tags. And so let's just say if I have an engineering project, I might tag it as engineering. I have marketing project, I might tag it marketing, so I can go and filter the project by those tags and say, show me all the tasks I have across all my marketing projects, right? And so Matrix filter option gives you all that flexibility. But again, this information is displayed as a list. The reason we don't do quadrants is because as you can see, you can customize the quadrant names. So then across projects, those quadrant names may not be consistent. But from here, you can search and you can sort and filter as needed. The other thing you can also do is actually you can go to, like, for example, the calendar view. What the calendar view does is actually aggregate, again, all the tasks in your calendar across multiple projects. Perfect. These are good questions. If there's any more, you can send it right here in the chat, or you can send me an email afterwards. I'd be happy to address it. And then, if you're looking at deploying Matrix across the organization this year, reach out to us. We'd be happy to give you our insights on how to best leverage Matrix for that. Other than that, I'll leave it here. And Matrix, we do have a lot of the other webinars on various topics as well. And we'll be publishing more and more webinars on very specific use cases. If there's anything that you're looking for, feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to look into it. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Appreciate it.